I'm gonna just flip the screen share on just for a minute for you guys here and get our opening image back up. It's uh, it's from a cave, uh, probably 30,000 years ago. I think this is a cave in France, if I'm not mistaken, France or Spain. But to take a look at that for a minute, if you came in late, you might not have even seen it. Just let that image sort of stay in the retina for a minute. Yeah, 30,000 years ago, more or less, uh, people on all the continents, except Antarctica, I guess, all the continents, human beings started going down into caves. And I want to sort of look at that today. What was that all about? What was that all about? Yeah. Um, Caves were starting to be explored all over the world, not just in Europe, where we had a kind of ice age, but there's there's these paintings in Australia, there's these paintings in Jordan in the Middle East. So about the same time, as if there was some kind of pattern or time release thing, human beings start going down, leaving the light and going down into the darkness. Kind of spiral journey. If you've ever been through caves, it's not a straight line, and then from a very tight space. In all these cases, from a very tight space, if you've ever done cave stuff, which I haven't, but they'd say you're going through these really tight spaces, and then all of a sudden, there's a open space, a big space. That was almost on all the cases, that was where the cave paintings were. And one of the original ones, the earliest ones we know, they were just putting their handprint there. And that's a very interesting thing, I think, about human beings. Um, the hands and all the cave paintings, sometimes they're paintings of the hunt. Sometimes they're painting of animals that they do hunt with, and then with people with bows and arrows. They all vary, but for some reason, human beings felt the need to do this, or they were almost like programmed, like time release, because we thought it was only a couple places in Europe, but the more we excavate, the more we find these things all over the planet at about the same time, 20, 30, 40,000 years. And we'd been around for 200,000 years pretty much in this form. But all of a sudden, it's sometime human beings did this. And, a lot of anthropologists will say that what the human being is, it's the animal who uses tools. And I think that's certainly true. If you ever saw the movie 2001: A Space Odyssey, when the man ape picked up the bone and realized it extended the power of his arm, and if you can remember that scene. Uh, so sure, yeah, we are the tool using animals, but I think there's more than that. We've developed into more than that. Maybe that covered us for most of 200,000 years, but somewhere around 30 or 40,000 years ago, we became a different kind of animal when we, at great peril, because these are dangerous journeys and dark journeys, at great peril, we decided to go down this labyrinthine kind of cave to find a big open space where we could do art. It was the beginning of art. Everything else was like you had a utilitarian values, chip and flint to make arrowheads and all that stuff. Well, that had a use, but what the use did this have? Well, I don't know. Personally, I think, and this is what I'm writing about on the op-ed in some ways, not just the Beatles, but about this part of human nature that humans, I think, need four things. We can get by but with without a lot of other things, but we need these four things. We need air, we need water, we need food, and we need meaning. We're the animal that craves meaning. We need meaning. Uh, and that's a very interesting thing to realize because people are blindsided. Many of you have. I've experienced being blindsided by this. I retired from something I'd done for 30 years from classroom teaching because it was just the end of the line for me. I still love teaching, but it was the end of the line for classroom teaching. I was only 52. And when I left the classroom, uh, who was I? I found a lot of meaning there. And anybody who's, you may have worked your whole life, had a great career, and then, you retire at 65 and you got all the food, water, and air and shelter that you need. And, you're really in a great comfort zone. And then, but this hits you like, well, what do I mean now? And meaning is so connected with the doing in our culture that it throws some people, and it threw me for a while. I had no idea what I was going to do at that time, and so I want to explore that a little bit. And things are the interesting thing about right now, which we reflected on last week when we worked with Sept Glenn. Again, the pandemic and life, on this planet right now, it can be pretty dark. Can be pretty dark. I think we all know what I'm talking about. There's a lot of darkness coming from a lot of different angles, environmentally, politically, just humanitarianly. Human beings are suffering a lot right now, and so it's a kind of dark. Well, I think it probably was the same 30 or 40,000 years ago, and there's some essential paradox of why you're here. It is a paradox. It's a paradox of what we're going to do with the today's poem. We're going to look at why human beings went into the dark to find a brighter light, which they did. They probably took rushes and things that they could have some light, uh, uh, or at least have light to do this art that they did, to do this art. But they went into the dark to find the light. That is the essential paradox of the spiritual journey, especially in the second or third part of life. Maybe it's the fourth part of life if you look at the Hindu view of it, that there's these four parts of life, and the third part of life, you real the kids are gone, maybe the job is over, maybe you get interested in, well, what's what then? Where am I going? Am I just killing time here or what? And so then you sort of look into spiritual practice. That's the third window from the Hindu perspective. That's the fall season. And then the fourth window is you have the guy who was a young boy in the first window, the old guy walking with his staff, and he's on a solitary kind of pilgrimage. And that's where we're all headed if we're lucky. And if you can have some people along with you, like we do right here, have some other pilgrims, well, that's a great joy. But really, you got to walk the Camino. You have to walk this inner Camino yourself. There's no other way. Nobody can walk it for you. You can't walk it for anybody else. And it has great meaning if you understand it. And so that's what we're looking into in today's poem. New poem just came up this week, and it's been writing itself for a while now, maybe a couple of years. And so I want to share it with you, and then we'll sort of break it open a little bit. And then, as always, I always look for something that's going to lead us to into the sitting, into the practice. Okay. Everything we've ever thought or could ever think about God is wrong. Everything we've ever thought or could ever think about God is wrong. Nothing we could ever say or write about the Spirit would be as true as breathing in and out, even just once, in simple gratitude. Everything we've ever thought or could ever think about God is wrong. Nothing we could ever say or write about the Spirit would be as true as breathing in and breathing out, even just once, in simple gratitude. So we can let go of the total insanity of trying to fit the great mystery into the tiny worldview we had to fashion as children, that always had to have an I at the center of it. So we can let go of the total insanity trying to fit the great mystery into the tiny worldview we had to fashion as children, that always had to have an I at the center of it. We can say yes to the grace that has accepted us, despite the fact that we are all flawed and unacceptable. We can say yes to the grace that has accepted us, despite the fact that we are all flawed and unacceptable. We can say yes to the miracle that this love supreme is dwelling in the silence, in the stillness, dwelling in our depths, dwelling in the cave of the heart. We can say yes to the grace that has accepted us, despite the fact that we are all flawed and unacceptable. We can say yes to the miracle that this love supreme is dwelling in the silence, dwelling in the stillness, dwelling in our depths, dwelling in the cave of the heart. That is kind of a miracle. That I used, talked about God in the first thing. Everything we've ever thought or could ever think about God is wrong. The Jews were insightful in the sense that they never printed that God. They left out the vowel in the middle, so you couldn't pronounce it. You see, it's been when they came up with a word that Christians added the vowels, and so we called it Yahweh, but they had just these 4 letters with no vowels again, so you couldn't say it, because we're talking another word for this immense thing, the pattern that connects everything. If you want to use that term, it's unsayable, the unsayable, the unthinkable. Okay. Yet, and this is the non-dual traditions in most of the major religions, they have a place for this. The non-dual traditions say, yet, it's unsayable, it's unknowable, it's immense, it's too vast. You could never come up with it, but yet it's dwelling in you. There's non-dual traditions in most of the old religions, going back to the Hindu religions, and of course, most of us grew up on some form of Christianity. Yet it wasn't this form. It wasn't the form that said, that really took Jesus seriously when he said, "The kingdom of heaven is within you." That great thing we're looking for. Kingdom of heaven, a bad translation. Jesus would have said Malkuta in Aramaic. He would say the Malkuta is within your Malkuta, feminine, the gendered word, which meant this power, this potency, really even almost this pregnancy. Uh, it's in you. You're all pregnant. Imagine the men hearing that, in the crowd. I think that's why he had 12 male disciples, because they were the ones who couldn't get it. They couldn't get it. The women sort of had a grasp of that, but the men, no, they need a little more work. They need a little more work. Still do. Still do. We can say yes to the grace that has accepted us. Well, I had a 30-something friend of mine who used to come to the Thursday night meetings, which we'd have here every Thursday. And after one meeting, I mentioned this before, he lagged behind. He said, I got a question. And so he said, you're always talking about grace. I don't know what you're talking about. He had really no tradition, even with that word. And well, this is really what grace is. To accept the fact that you are accepted, despite the fact that we're all flawed and unacceptable in some way. So to say, hey, yeah, I could do this. I can, I'm worthy. That's really what grace is. That has, we can say that yes to the grace, yes to this fact that we are accepted, even though we're all unacceptable. That takes a lot. Most people say, oh, it's not for me. That's for holy people or something. No, not at all. And you can say yes to, it's an absolute miracle that I've used the Coltrane term, that this love supreme, that's what Coltrane called this pattern that connects, what Einstein called the unified field. There's other people have thrown words at this. Well, for 30 or 40,000 years, at first it was just pictures, the handprint, I'm here. Sort of a kind of in visual terms, a great I am. They're leaving a message there. And then as it developed, you really hear what Jesus is talking about in the Gospel of Thomas when he says, if you bring forth what is within you, what you bring forth will save you. And so these people were bringing forth visions, dreams, imaginative things, and for the first time, putting it on an outside surface. Well, that accelerated evolution 100 times, 1,000 times, because we hadn't changed much in 170,000 years. And then all of a sudden in 30,000 years, and you can see the pace of how the change comes. I grew up listening to people on the party line, look at 50 years, 60 years, and we're riding in light. We're connected to the whole world. I mean, this is amazing. But it started with those handprints. It started with that taking something of yourself and putting it on the outside surface, you see. That's why Merton understood how writing could energize the spiritual journey. And that's why I write after I sit. But so, this cave of the heart. Now, people also went into caves long before they did this for shelter, especially in the European climes, because, we had the Ice Age. And so, I live in the Lucy Hollow is a kind of cave because we're built into the earth. So the temperature here doesn't fluctuate a lot, you see. So we went into caves for shelter. Well, it's the same way that my image of meditation, the deepest one I've come up with is, and it's really from the Hindu tradition, the non-dual Hindu tradition, is there's the cave of the heart, where you can go for shelter too. Shelter from the storm of what's going on. We got to remember there's a place to go for that. But who talks about this kind of stuff now? We're drowning in words, and we're going to go into the cave in the silence, because the love supreme is dwelling in the silence, in the stillness, dwelling in the cave of the heart. And so this is totally paradoxical. We're shutting our eyes, most of us. If you're not a Buddhist practitioner, and even some Buddhist practitioners, you shut your eyes to go into the dark right away, looking for the light. There's light there. There's light there. You know, the Buddhas don't talk about, don't use the G word much, but they talk about finding the light. The enlightenment is in you. Well, where would it be? This image is a very potent image to drop down out of place where all the words are, where all the where a lot of trouble is, as well as a lot of brilliance too. This left brain of ours gave us computers, so here we are. You can't, you can't knock that. That's pretty great. But then we're sort of overwhelmed with our own brilliance. We're overwhelmed with our own tools. We're overwhelmed by the amount of words that come into it. So to be able to drop down out of that for a little bit of time every day into through the body via the breath through the body into the cave of the heart, it's a necessity more than ever. You know, and I got another poem here that I wrote a long time ago, but it's called 20,000 Fire Drills. And I was trying to calculate how many times I had probably sat in my life, starting, for 50 years, maybe 20,000. I call them fire drills. Here's the poem. Practicing daily meditation is like practicing 20,000 fire drills. So you won't panic when the pure light comes in a flash, because you've practiced day after day how to walk through the wall of fire into the unified field, because you practice day after day how to walk through the wall of fire into the unified field of the heart, day after day, all the way home to the pattern that connects. The Tibetans practice, they're especially keen on this because they know the moment of death, it ain't over. It's just a transition point. And how prepared are you for what comes next? They call it the first thing is just a burst of pure light, So you won't panic when the pure light comes in a flash, because you practice day after day how to walk through the wall of fire. That wall of fire is in your mind. It's all those thoughts bumping up against one another like atoms and creating all this friction. And so to learn how to drop out of that and through that, that's where the breath comes in. Again, the breath is the power of the spirit, you see. So to use the breath, which is what I'm inviting you to do when we start to sit today, to use the breath to pass through that wall of fire. Before Dante could go into paradise, he had to walk through a wall of fire. That was the end of purgatory. And to walk through a wall of fire on his own. Virgil couldn't go with him, his guide. He had to do it on his own. So we're all doing that every time. There's this wall of resistance. So the breath can take you through that into the body, down into the cave of the heart, where you can have shelter for a little bit of time. You can rest in natural great peace, as one great Tibetan says, but also you can, it's quieter. One of my great friends said, "Oh, I love when I get so quiet that I can feel my own heartbeat." That's a beautiful, though you're really there. You can hear your own heartbeat. You can feel it beat. You're that still and that quiet. And that's it. Then you're just down there. And you don't have to do anything. You just have to sort of dwell there. And then you bounce back up and you're working at mid-ocean level with some problem you got, or then you just even come up to the absolute surface of things, and you wonder, well, gee, is Notre Dame going to beat FSU in football tonight? That amounts to absolutely zero in terms of meaningful things, but the mind goes there. Well, then you just, when you realize you're at mid-ocean or upper ocean, on the surface or somewhere else, you just say, oh, okay, I'll drop back down. And the breath can come in handy. The sacred word can come in handy if you work in the centering prayer tradition. But basically, you're the eye of the heart notices where your mind is all the time. The eye of the heart reminds you, hey, come back home, drop down, you see. So, okay, well, let's get into meditation posture here.